Jesus is the light. He is the light of the world.
Largo, Florida, December 24th, 2023. It's 1:45 in the afternoon. On this suburban street, the humidity of a Florida winter hangs over lawns decorated with plastic reindeer and holiday lights. But the sounds of the season have just been replaced by something sharp and final. A 23-year-old woman lies on the pavement. Inches away, her 11-month-old son sits in a plastic carrier, shielded only by the thin fabric of his car seat. Neighbors don't hear carols. They hear the screams of a mother watching her sons destroy their family in broad daylight. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a random act of violence. The shooter was 14. The second shooter was 15. And the victim was their own sister. But the real question wasn't just how a fight over Christmas presents turned deadly. It was how two young boys were allowed to walk the streets with loaded weapons long before the first shot was fired. Welcome to Real True Crime 24/7. Before we begin, we want to take a moment to pause. Our hearts go out to the victims of this tragedy and their grieving families. We also pray for you, our viewers, for your safety and the protection of your loved ones during the holiday seasons and beyond. We appreciate you joining our community as we look for the truth. Today, we are examining a case that redefined the nightmare before Christmas for a Florida community. We are reporting the details the mainstream media often overlooks, focusing on the systemic failures and the hard facts that the cameras usually miss once the initial headlines fade. This case involves violence within a family and involves minors. We approach this with the utmost respect for Abrielle's memory. May her children, her family, and all of you watching stay safe wherever you are. Now let's get into it. Abrielle Baldwin was 23 years old. To those who knew her, she was Abby, the glue of her family and a dedicated mother of two young boys. Her life revolved around providing a stable future for her 6-year-old and her 11-month-old. Her social media wasn't filled with drama or conflict. It was filled with photos of her children. They were her entire world. Then there are her younger brothers, DeMarcus, age 14, and Darcus, age 15. To a passerby, they were just teenagers. To local law enforcement, they were recurring names in the system. What should have been a final trip to the mall for holiday gifts ended in a double shooting. It left a mother dead and a teenager hospitalized with a bullet wound to the stomach. What we uncovered about the months leading up to this afternoon reveals a pattern of unchecked behavior. It exposes a reality about how easy it was for these boys to stay armed. The story of Abrielle Baldwin isn't just about a family tragedy. It's about the consequences of a culture where children carry the firepower of adults. Abrielle Baldwin was 23 years old, but her life carried the weight and maturity of someone much older. In the Largo community, she wasn't just another resident. She was a young woman who had survived the challenges of her youth to become a stabilizing force for her family. As the eldest sibling, Abrielle often acted as a secondary parental figure. Her friends describe her as the logical one, the person who could de-escalate a situation with a few words. She moved with a specific purpose, to break the cycles she saw around her. She was the mother of two boys, a 6-year-old and an 11-month-old. Her social media was a digital scrapbook of motherhood. It showed no trace of the violence that surrounded her brothers. Instead, it featured her sons in matching outfits, birthday celebrations, and quiet moments at home. On this particular Christmas Eve, Abrielle was focused on the logistics of joy. She had spent the morning coordinating with her mother, Joyce, ensuring that every gift was wrapped and every plan for the family dinner at their grandmother's house was set. Abrielle was also a provider. She worked hard to maintain her own independence while staying close enough to her family to guide her younger brothers. Neighbors saw her as the anchor. While the teenagers in her house were frequently seen coming and going at odd hours, Abrielle was the one seen loading her kids into the car, heading to work, and coming home to be a mother. She was the one who had it figured out. She was the person everyone assumed would eventually lead the Baldwin family into a more stable future. But while Abrielle was building, her brothers were dismantling. DeMarcus, 14, and Darkus, 15, lived in a reality that was worlds away from their sisters. They weren't interested in school or the typical milestones of adolescence. According to Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, these boys were active participants in a dangerous subculture known as car hopping. This isn't just a petty crime. It is a systematic hunt. Groups of juveniles walk through suburban neighborhoods in the middle of the night, checking door handles. They aren't looking for electronics or cash. They are looking for firearms left in unlocked glove boxes and center consoles. By the time December 2023 arrived, DeMarcus and Darkus weren't just teenagers. They were seasoned burglars with long criminal resumes. They had been arrested multiple times for vehicle burglaries and grand theft. Yet, due to the nature of the juvenile justice system, they were consistently released back into the same environment. Inside the home, a toxic power dynamic was taking hold. DeMarcus, the younger of the two, was consumed by a specific type of resentment. He felt that Darkus was receiving more attention and more resources from their mother. This wasn't a typical sibling rivalry, it was an armed competition. Family members later revealed that both boys carried guns as part of their daily attire. They didn't hide them in the back of a closet. They tucked them into their waistbands before heading to the mall or a friend's house. The pressure within the household was documented by those who knew them. There were whispers in the neighborhood about the brothers' behavior, but in an area where snitching is a death sentence, the community stayed quiet. The boys felt invincible because they were armed. They didn't see the guns as tools of last resort. They saw them as the only way to settle a score. While Abrielle was picking out Christmas outfits for her sons, her brothers were ensuring their semi-automatic handguns were loaded and ready. The collision wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. The afternoon began at the Largo Mall. It was the typical December rush, with families rushing to finish their shopping. Abrielle was there with her mother, Joyce, and her two younger brothers. They were supposed to be picking out gifts, but the atmosphere changed as they moved through the stores. DeMarcus started tracking every purchase his mother made. He wasn't looking at the items, he was looking at the price tags. He became convinced that Darkus was getting more. He felt slighted by his own mother, and he didn't keep his frustration quiet. What began as a complaint about a few dollars turned into a loud, public scene. By the time they reached the parking lot, the argument wasn't about gifts anymore. It was about respect. The brothers traded insults as they piled into the car. The presence of their mother and Abrielle's children didn't matter. In their world, a perceived slight over a Christmas present was enough to justify a total loss of control. The tension didn't stay at the mall. It sat in the backseat of the car during the entire drive to their grandmother's house. Tuesday, 8 p.m. The family pulls away from the mall. Inside the vehicle, the air is thick with the brothers bickering. They are no longer just arguing, they are making threats. Joyce tries to intervene, pleading with her sons to drop the subject for the sake of the holiday. They ignore her. 1:30 p.m. The car turns onto 22nd Avenue and pulls into the grandmother's driveway. This was meant to be the place where Abrielle would drop off her children before heading to her work shift. It was supposed to be a place of safety. But the moment the doors opened, the brothers brought their conflict onto the pavement. 1:40 p.m. The shouting matches continue in the yard. Abrielle is standing there, holding her 11-month-old son in his carrier. She is watching her family fall apart over a shopping trip. She finally speaks up. She tells DeMarcus to stop with that stuff. She reminds him that it's Christmas and that there are children present. She's trying to be the adult in the room, but DeMarcus is no longer listening to reason. He reaches into his waistband. He pulls out a .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun, a weapon he was never legally allowed to have. He levels the barrel at Darkus's head. He tells his own brother, in front of their mother and sister, that he is going to kill him right there. The uncle, who had been inside the house, hears the screaming and runs out. He manages to get between the two boys, physically shoving DeMarcus away, trying to create a buffer. He thinks he's de-escalated the situation. He thinks the threat is over. He has no idea that the focus of the aggression is about to shift. The uncle's attempt to push DeMarcus away backfires. Instead of cooling off, the 14-year-old's rage finds a new target. He turns the heavy .40 caliber handgun away from his brother and points it directly at his sister. Abrielle is standing just feet away. She is still holding her 11-month-old son. She has no weapon. She has no protection. She is simply a sister trying to talk sense into her brother. DeMarcus pulls the trigger. The sound of the shot rips through the quiet neighborhood. The bullet strikes Abrielle square in the chest. The force of the impact sends her to the ground. She collapses while still clutching her baby's carrier. Within seconds, the driveway becomes a crossfire zone. Darkus, the 15-year-old, hears the shot and realizes his sister has been hit. He doesn't call for help. He pulls out his own semi-automatic handgun, a .29 caliber, and opens fire on his younger brother. A bullet hits DeMarcus in the stomach and he falls to the pavement. In less than a minute, the grandmother's driveway has turned into a scene of total devastation. Two brothers have shot each other or their sister. A young mother is bleeding out near the Christmas decorations. And an infant sits in a carrier on the concrete, surrounded by shell casings. The 911 dispatchers are suddenly flooded with calls. Neighbors report a volley of gunfire on a street that should have been silent on Christmas Eve. When the first patrol cars scream onto the scene, the officers find a chaotic sight. They see Abrielle lying unresponsive on the ground. Nearby, DeMarcus is clutching his stomach, wounded but still breathing. Darkus is nowhere to be found. He has already fled the scene, running through backyards to hide the evidence of his involvement. The first priority for the responders is the child. They find the 11-month-old still strapped into the carrier. Despite being in the direct line of fire and inches away from his mother when the bullet struck, the baby is physically unharmed. He is crying, but he is alive. Paramedics work frantically on Abrielle. They move her into the ambulance and rush toward the local trauma center. But the .40 caliber round has done too much damage to her internal organs. The medical team at the hospital tries every possible measure to stabilize her. At 2:12 p.m., the efforts stop. Abrielle Baldwin is pronounced dead. While the hospital staff begins the process of notifying the family, investigators back at the house are marking evidence. They find two different types of shell casings. They find the blood on the driveway. They realize this wasn't an outside attack. This was an internal collapse of a family, triggered by a petty argument and carried out with stolen guns. Ellis County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri takes command of the scene. The investigation is massive from the start. While forensics teams mark the spots where the shell casings fell, deputies focus on the brother who ran. Darkus doesn't stay to help his sister or check on his wounded brother. He flees to a friend's house nearby. Along the way, he gets rid of his weapon, hoping to put distance between himself and the crime. But the search doesn't take long. Deputies track him down and take him into custody shortly after the shooting. Back at the grandmother's house, detectives recover the .40 caliber handgun DeMarcus used. They run the serial numbers through their database, and the results confirm a growing problem in Florida. Both guns, the one used to kill Abrielle and the one used to shoot DeMarcus, were stolen. They had been taken from unlocked cars in the months leading up to Christmas. Detectives begin interviewing the family members who stood in that driveway. The story they hear is consistent. There was no robbery, no gang hit, and no outside threat. The motive was exactly what it appeared to be at the mall. A 14-year-old was jealous that his brother got more Christmas presents. Multiple witnesses confirm that the violence was the direct result of a sibling rivalry that turned into a shootout. The legal system moves quickly. The state attorney's office looks at the evidence and the history of the boys involved. DeMarcus, the 14-year-old, is charged with first-degree murder. Because of his criminal record and the fact that he pointed a gun at his sister's chest and pulled the trigger, the state decides to charge him as an adult. He also faces charges of child abuse and possession of a firearm by a delinquent. Darkus, the 15-year-old, faces charges of attempted first-degree murder for shooting his brother, along with tampering with physical evidence for trying to hide his gun. When detectives sit across from the boys in the interview room, the reaction is chilling. There is no breakdown. There are no tears for their sister. Instead, the boys focus on the same petty grievances from the mall. They talk about the gifts. They talk about the argument. Their behavior shows a total lack of remorse for the fact that their sister is in a morgue and her children are now orphans. They seem more concerned with the rivalry between them than the life they just ended. In a single afternoon, the Baldwin family tree was effectively severed. Joyce Birch, the mother who watched this happen, didn't just lose her eldest daughter. She lost her sons to a prison system that will likely hold them for decades. The silence in their home is now filled with the weight of what happened in that driveway. Abrielle's 2 sons are being raised by relatives. They are safe, but they carry a heavy history. They will grow up with the knowledge that their mother was killed while trying to protect them and maintain peace during a holiday. The cycle of violence that claimed Abrielle has left 2 children to navigate a world without her guidance. Sheriff Gualtieri's press conference after the incident went viral across the country. He didn't hold back. He pointed directly to the car-hopping culture and the ease with which teenagers are obtaining weapons. He made it clear that when people leave guns in unlocked cars, they are providing the tools for tragedies like this one. He called for a change in how the community views gun security and how the legal system handles juvenile offenders who repeatedly break the law. This case isn't an isolated event. Florida is seeing a rise in juvenile gun violence, often fueled by weapons stolen from neighborhoods that feel safe enough to leave car doors unlocked. It's an epidemic of opportunity. When we look at what could have been done, the answers are uncomfortable. The school system and local youth programs had already flagged DeMarcus and Darcus. There were chances to intervene before they ever picked up a stolen .40 caliber. The tragedy of Abrielle Baldwin shows what happens when those warning signs are ignored until it's too late. But through the grief, a legacy is being built. A GoFundMe for Abrielle's sons raised thousands of dollars, proving that the community wants to provide the stability she can no longer give them. This Christmas, her mother, Joyce, shared a heartbreaking message to her daughter, whom she called Bree. Joyce wrote, "Rip Bree. This day is so hard for me, and you will always be missed, and Mommy will always have your kids back, and I will always keep going knowing that I wish I could turn this around and have my family back. And I know in my heart you always wanted me to be strong, and I can hear you saying, 'You got this, Joyce.' And that's what I live off your voice. And now I want you to rest, baby girl. And Mommy will see you again, and tell everybody I said hi." Rip Abrielle Baldwin never forgot and always will be missed. The family and close relatives even paid a visit to her grave this year to honor that memory. They are trying to be strong, just like Abrielle wanted. Abrielle Baldwin was more than a victim in a news report. She was a daughter, a sister, and a protector. She was the one who stood up when things got dangerous, even when it cost her everything. If you or someone you know is aware of a young person in possession of an illegal weapon, please reach out to local authorities. You might be preventing a story like this from happening again. What are your thoughts on this case? Was the system to blame, or was this a failure within the home? Let us know in the comments respectfully. This is a real family grieving a real loss. If you appreciate our reporting on the facts the mainstream media misses, please subscribe to Real True Crime 24/7 and hit the notification bell. Rest in peace, Abrielle. Your light was extinguished far too soon, but your memory lives on through your boys and the family that will never forget you.